Good morning. As Amy said, my name is Megan Gannon Anderson. This is my mother, Nancy Gannon, and it is a real privilege to be with all of you this morning. So thank you for having us. We were asked to come talk to you today about our family's journey. So I'm just curious in the audience, how many of you are family members of a person with an intellectual? And how many of you may be self-advocate? And I'm assuming then some professionals as well. Wonderful. Well, we're grateful that you are all here, and we're happy to talk about this very important topic of future planning. I'd like to start in a little bit of a non-traditional way. As Amy mentioned, my claim to fame is my sister, Erin Gannon. And if you talk to people in the community, a lot of people know Erin a whole lot better than they know myself or my mom. But my mother's here with me today because she's the one who got me involved in advocacy and Achieva. My mother, I think, is one of those grassroots advocates that helped launch us to where we are today in the world of disabilities. So I'd like you to hear just a little bit from Erin and my parents. So we're going to start with an audio, a picture that looks like a video, I hope, because it was an audio podcast of Erin interviewing my parents about their journey. So if you don't mind taking a listen to this story, and then I'll elaborate from here.
Welcome to Look Who's Here. I'm the host, Erin Gannon, and I am talking with my mom and dad, Dr. and Mrs. Robert Gannon.
Good afternoon, Erin.
Hi, Erin.
Hi, Dad. Today, we are talking with my parents about what life has been like with a child with Down syndrome. My parents, Bob and Nancy Gannon. I have a question for both of you. When did you first find out that you would be a parent?
A parent at any time or just with you?
With me.
Well, probably 6 months or 7 months before you were born. That's when we knew we would be parents again.
Dad?
When Mom told me. The good news.
What was your reaction to me of having Down syndrome?
Well, we knew you had Down syndrome right after you were born in the hospital. Pediatrician confirmed your dad's diagnosis that you had Down syndrome. And then I asked to see a sister who I had worked with in a class for little children that had intellectual disabilities. And so she came to see me because I really didn't know a whole lot about Down syndrome. So she was a good source of information for me. She came to the hospital and we talked.
Dad?
I walked over to your crib because I was in the delivery room. I looked down and I said, she looks a little different than my other children. That's what I thought, we got something special here.
What was your favorite stories from when I was growing up?
There are many of favorite stories. First of all, when you were brought home as an infant, you weren't a fussy baby. You were a very easy baby, but sometimes you didn't wake up to get a bottle. And so you had 5 brothers and sisters who went up and constantly woke you up. If you turned and squealed 1 inch, there was somebody there to pick you up. I think she needs fed. I think she needs her pants changed. I think this baby has to get up. So you had a lot of people taking care of you. I said I was going to put a sign on the crib. She has been fed. Her diaper is clean. Leave her sleep. Love, Mom. Okay?
One of my favorites was when you were, 2 or 3 and learning how to walk, and your brothers would put you in a corner. And then they come and say, look, Mom, look, Dad, we got her standing up. Now she's going to walk. And then you couldn't fall either way, so you had to come forward. Take your first steps.
What was it like sending me to school with Down syndrome?
First of all, you went to a nursery school where there were other children with different disabilities. And then you went to a Montessori program where you were the only child in the class with a disability. And the other children liked the idea that they could read to you, and you liked the idea of learning from these other children. And so it was a really good match. I was very happy about your early years. You were doing very well.
You were a quick learner. Of course, you had some tales in school that that didn't always feed the teacher's expectations.
You got in trouble.
Like the time at was it
Pathfinder?
Pathfinder, where you were sort of misbehaving and you crawled under the desk and wouldn't come out, and the teacher very upset. You said, "I won't come out until I have my lawyer," who was your godfather, Uncle Carl. And we thought that was a very funny statement, but teacher was very serious about it.
We thought it was great that you were asking for a lawyer.
Even though I was different and learning different things and just trying to learn life, what was that about?
Well, first of all, Erin, we decided that we would never tell you that you couldn't learn something, that you'd have to figure that out for yourself eventually, that there were some things you would not be able to do, like driving a car. But we never said you won't do this or you won't do that. We always felt as though you would accomplish as much as you possibly could.
I have a question for you to that. When I get into trouble, did I get in trouble like my brothers and sisters, or is it differently?
Well, every one of you were different. So, yeah, your troubles were different than Megan's or Mary Beth's or Kevin or Sean or Mark. You had your own set. You had your own way. You got into your own troubles.
What are your dreams for me?
When you were little, what were our dreams?
Yes.
I think what we wanted most of all, that you would grow up and that you would be able to do the things that you wanted to do, that you would be independent as much as you could possibly be. And I think that was our dream, that you would live in a house with a friend, that you would be able to have a job, that you would be able to do the things that you enjoyed.
Same question, Dad.
You have pretty much fulfilled all the dreams we've had for you. In fact, you've exceeded them. You've amazed us. Some of the things you've accomplished and some of the places you've taken us, like the Special Olympics, going to Ireland to play in the World Games, going to North Carolina to play in the World Games. We never thought that was possible. And yet you took to it and you did it.
And the one thing that I kind of like is learning how to do podcasting and interviewing.
That's another feather in your cap.
Oh, yeah. How did you feel when your last child left home for good?
Well, when the last one walks out the door, you say, whew, well, now what? Now what are we going to do? We don't have anybody that we take care of on a daily basis. But Daddy and I have always been good friends. So we had each other, and we were glad to see that you had left. You're supposed to, the old saying goes, you give them wings and they fly. And we thought we gave you wings. We hoped we gave you wings.
Dad?
Well, it was a sad day. It was an adjustment because we were so used to having you around, and you're so bubbly and always full of yourself that it made it a quiet house. But we gradually learned and we kept in touch. So just a new lifestyle.
Thanks. If you could do everything again, would you raise me differently?
Good question, Erin. I don't think so. We treated you like we treated every baby we had. We didn't do a whole lot of different things with you. It just took you longer to learn things, but we didn't do anything different with you. You were included in everything we did as a family. We went to the shore, you learned how to swim. I think we felt as though we raised you pretty much the way we raised the other ones. We gave you lots of love, gave you lots of cuddling. You were also disciplined when you did things that were out of order.
Dad, same question.
Well, part of it is the good Lord looking after us, but I don't think we would have changed anything. You just seemed to take to everything we tried to teach you, and no, we wouldn't. I think you turned out great as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how we could have improved on it.
Is there anything else would you like to say?
I just think we're very proud to be your parents.
You've been a blessing in our life. You have taught us so many things about love and all that's good in life. So we're just very, very happy to have you.
I think I had a wonderful life being a daughter and having wonderful parents.
I think you turned out pretty darn good.
You've enriched our lives, honey.
Very good, Erin.
So thank you for indulging us, because I think that gives you a real window into our family's journey. So we were asked today to talk about our family's journey and future planning. I don't know about you, but even in my own life, when someone says future planning, it feels a little overwhelming. What is future planning? Well, if you Google it or you chat GPT, the definitions that come up. A future plan or anticipating planning is a detailed plan for a person's future that's created when a carer can no longer provide care. It can include information about person's daily routines, living arrangements, finances, and medical history. The plan is developed over time by the carer, the person, family, friends, and professionals. Another definition. Future planning is making conscious decisions now by looking to the larger prospects instead of just the day-to-day events. And yet another definition. Future planning. It's a time to prepare emotionally for the future and to adjust plans as dreams evolve. It's a voluntary process driven by dreams and goals. I don't know about you, but that seems a lot more enticing to think about how to link future planning to dreams and goals. If you just think about future planning, I will never forget when I had young toddlers of my own and we were meeting for the first time with someone who said, well, you need to be thinking about college savings. And I had 2 toddlers and was pregnant. And I was like, college savings? Are you kidding me? I can't even figure out what they're wearing tomorrow. It's overwhelming, right? For any of us. So it's certainly overwhelming when you think about future planning with a person with disabilities. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So it's important. Why? Because we want to secure a fulfilling future for all people in every stage of life. This is a picture of Erin. You saw the picture with my mom and dad. This is a picture of Erin with her 5 siblings. This was just a few years ago at my niece's wedding. So as you can see, and you heard in the video, that Erin had a lot of us helping to take care for her. But the difference, Erin and I are only 3 years apart. My other siblings are a fair bit older, so it used to be the big kids and the little girls. So I was around with Erin and witnessed to a lot of what planning mom and dad were doing, because she and I were real close in age. So where our paths started to diverge and my parents were doing different types of planning for Erin, I was sort of alongside that ride. So here's a picture of Erin as a toddler. And you heard her ask my parents, what did you think when I was born? This is Erin as a toddler, school-aged years, and then a picture of her graduating when she eventually graduated from Gannon. Mom, what did you think life would be like?
Well, first of all, I was very surprised. Whoa.
You got to use the mic.
We were surprised when Erin was born, and my husband immediately, who is an obstetrician gynecologist, said, I think this baby has Down syndrome. We needed the pediatrician to come and confirm it, and he did. And so prior to leaving the hospital, I was saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to take care of a child with a disability. I'm not sure what to do. How am I going to do this? How are the other kids going to handle this? What are they going to think about having a sibling with a disability? My husband said, okay, well, if we take her home and we think she's a problem, they will think she's a problem. If we think of her as gift, they will think of her as gift. So that was our philosophy. And other than that, she just was a new baby in the house. And there was not a whole lot of things that I did differently with her, except that she was a very placid baby. So you did have to wake her up and you did have to keep her awake to feed her. But other than that, we did the same thing I did with all the rest of them. She was pretty easy baby.
And so initially, when you start out that planning, you don't think about future planning, right? Just like every phase in life, you chunk it out. So you go from thinking about early intervention and preschool and those two things, and you phase through how you get through this piece and what might the next piece look like. And you heard in the video, Mom talk about changing even preschools. And why was that, Mom? You moved her from one preschool even to another.
Well, we had a really good AAIU had a program going on right in my neighborhood, really, and that was easy. We lived in Mount Lebanon. We went to the church, but she just was more placid. I wanted more maybe gross motor than what she was getting. So at that time, you have to remember that Erin was born in 1972. The right to education didn't even come in until 1973. So there wasn't this mainstreaming ability or that we have today. So pretty much on my own, I went to another preschool program, and they said, well, they never had a child with a disability, but they would think about it. I said, okay. So they did. They took her. So she went to St. Paul's, and she got a lot of tricycle, that sort of thing that she was doing. And then I decided a Montessori program might be really good. And again, I went and asked the teacher. They'd never done this before. I said, I think would be advantageous to your other students as well as to Erin. So she spent a year right before she started first grade. She spent a year at a Montessori program. So I think we were kind of stumbling. I can't say we were planning very well in the beginning. We were just kind of going by the seat of our pants as to what we could do to make life better for her.
So you think about early intervention and preschool, and maybe the first thing isn't the best fit. You think about a second fit in this case. And you think about school age years. And what is the plan during those school years? And you're eliciting the help maybe of some advocates in the school and doing IEPs. And Mom, I recollect, had some women friends sitting around the dining room table because, as she's mentioning, that was early. So they were advocating together and trying to find those resources. Now you have a lot of advocates in the community. You have people at Achieva and organizations like that to help with some of that. And then you start to think about what other things would be next. Just school. Just like everybody else, people have extra interests. What are hobbies? Extracurriculars? What do people get into? You heard a little bit about my dad mention that Erin got very involved in Special Olympics. She started out as swimming, again, because it was something to promote healthy lifestyle and exercise, and she loved it. She took to the water, and she loved Special Olympics. She participated on all kinds of those teams, which then opened doors to other sports and activities. And she and my dad picked up golf, and he was her coach. And she did so well that she took them to the World Games for Special Olympics. And you heard Mom and Dad say, is that something you'd ever dream of? That she'd be the one leading you to trips outside of the country because it was something she was passionate about, enjoyed, and just took to. So you think about all these other things that fit into a person's life that bring them joy and fulfillment, and what might those be? But when you started her in Special Olympics in elementary years and special dance classes and theater, did you have any idea what that would look like and what it would bring? So not a lot of planning, but a lot of allowing the future to unfold.
I will have to tell you, I recently 2 years ago, I took her to speak to the state police and barrack. And so there was all young and old policemen. And they asked her, they said, well, now we understand that you play golf. How did you get into that? And Erin, still, her hands are very small. And she stood up and put her little finger up. And she said, one day, my mom was busy and my dad wanted to go hit golf balls. So he took me with him. And he said, someday I'm going to make a golfer out of her. And that's how I learned. And that was pretty much it. I mean, that was how I started. And then she got into golf because it became a sport for Special Olympics around a year later. So she did play. And recently, she doesn't play with the Special Olympics anymore. Somebody asked her if she was still playing, and she said, I don't play professionally anymore. I just play with my mom.
So then, you think about the school years and education and you're chunking some of this future planning. And again, what fits for one person may not fit for someone else. And so Erin went to Pathfinder for many, many years. And at that time, then I was graduating from high school and going on to college. And it was coming up for Erin that what would she do? And so mom and dad were thinking then at the end of those, last years of school, what was missing for her? What was she capable of? What could she do? And what would you do next? So you made a decision at that time to change schools again. With the idea of vocational planning in mind. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
At the time, I just didn't, she was 18 and she could spend the next couple of years in school till she was 21. I did not think that the vocational training that she was getting was really suitable for her. And so they were opening a new school at Gannon High School. And I thought, okay. So we went down and I spoke with them. So we transferred her to Gannon. At that time, that was primarily because I had spoken with them about the different kind of vocational training. Erin decided she wanted to work in an office. Now, we had people saying, yes, we think that's probably a good idea from what she's learned. She probably could. She could work in an office, but it's still very difficult for us to get our into an office to even have them think that they might hire somebody with a disability. My husband's medical office, one of the offices was downtown. So he went to his partners, and yes, they would give her a job. So she worked a couple days a week. Now, she had to get to downtown. So the job coach said, we'll get her a transportation person will come and we'll teach her and she'll ride the bus. And I said, how could she ride the bus? She's legally blind. How is she going to find the bus? He said, how do you think people who are totally blind get on a bus? Right. Didn't think about that. So, yes, she learned how to take a bus downtown and back. And she worked in her dad's office for probably 13, 14 years until they moved that office. In the meantime, she had started to work at Achieva. And so she was doing both jobs for a short period of time. But it was all a matter of working with the professionals, wanting her to be able to do what she wanted to do. And we were very fortunate because my husband had an office, and that got our foot in the door to have her do some office work.
She did the same office work that I did in the medical records department. And one time I was asking her about the file room and some of the things we did. And she said, oh, Megan, I'm sure I do it better than you did. I said, I'm sure you probably did. But you heard in that the fears of, could she do that? How would she get there? How would she get home? Could she navigate a bus? who was going to help her learn how to do that. And in that involved some planning and future planning and the idea of vocational planning, the idea of tapping into the resources where there are services such as a job coach to help people navigate this, and employment. She had a separate transportation coach at one point. So when you're thinking about those school years and you heard, well, how did we get to figuring out? It was sort of following what Erin said she thought she might want to do and trying to figure out ways to pull in the resources that could help her do that. And it isn't a linear path. And there were more than one starts and stops and some difficult moments in all of that. Maybe even some tears and frustrations about what resources are really available and how we get to them. But you want to tap into the experts to help you navigate that, because they may tell you things that are possible that you never thought possible. The idea of her taking a bus downtown, I think Mom's underplaying it. Mom was a little terrified of that, right? She did it successfully. When she switched jobs, she was taking 2 buses, one to downtown and one to get on and go see a therapist in Oakland. I thought she'd be able to do that on her own. And she did, very successfully. Not without missing a bus or 2, not without some worrisome moments in there, but she could do it. And so you tap into the resources to do that. For some people, and Mom mentioned, that the schooling that was available when Erin was young is really different than what's available now. I was talking the other day with Melissa, who may be in the audience or here later, and she was talking about secondary education and thinking, for family members at one point a few years ago, well, Pennsylvania doesn't offer too many colleges. I might have to think about someplace else. That wasn't an option at all 30-some years ago. So there are a lot of things to be thinking about, and maybe people are thinking about higher education, not just vocational training. And so you want to think about, how would you save for that? Some of the presentations you'll hear today will talk about ABLE accounts and trusts. So once Erin became an employee and was earning income, we had to think about, what did that mean to ensure she was able to keep the benefits that were her waiver program and would keep her getting the other services that she still very much needed, but a working income for herself that she was very proud of, and she will tell you how proud of she is of that. So, Mom, in order to think about those things, you were thinking about the fact that now she had an income and she had benefits. What did you do then?
Fortunately, at that time, when Erin was just beginning to work and the trust was just in its infancy stages, I happened to be lucky enough to serve on the original committee that formed the family trust. So as soon as it was up and running, and I said 25 years, and Amy said, 26. So as soon as the trust was up and running, we began to put money into the trust. And Erin could put her own money into the trust. And that, she was very pleased. She always gets the trust account comes directly to her. And then she will say, look how much money I have. I could do this. Maybe we'll take a cruise. Maybe we'll do this. So it has become a very important part of her feeling very secure that she has money. Big money is what she calls it. My big money. Yeah.
I think the other part of that money, for Erin to be able to put dollars in it, that my parents were thinking about was, what about all the things that benefits don't maybe cover? And what about things that Erin might need in the future? And my parents were fairly open with my brothers and sisters and I that they wanted her to be as independent as possible. They wanted to have resources in place should anything happen to them, that they weren't able to do that for her. So the trust became a twofold option for our family. Erin could put some of her earnings aside, although she'll tell you she likes to keep some of her earnings because her weekly Starbucks dates are really important. Once she started working, then Mom and Dad started thinking about living arrangements. And as I said, Erin and I are only a couple years apart. And I'll never forget this. I got married when I was 26, so Erin would have been about 23. And again, probably at that time, Mom and Dad weren't quite thinking about Erin being independent enough to live on her own. And Erin and I were sitting on the front porch of our family home, and she says, well, now you're leaving me too, even though I had been out of the house for several years. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, I'm the only one left with Mom and Dad. I said, huh, what do you think about that? She said, well, I think one day I might have to move out too. Huh. And Mom, I remember posing this question to you, and you mentioned to me a gentleman who said to you, what? Why wouldn't you think?
Some of you here may remember Norm Udstrom. And Norm said to me, well, what makes you think that she would not want to move up? First of all of our children want to leave home. So what makes you think that she doesn't want to leave home and that she can't do that? Well, I hadn't thought totally about that. So that was the beginning. Erin was about 29. And the first time we went to look for something, it was an apartment building. There was a full-time person that was there, full-time manager of these 4 apartments. And the apartment was close to us, and I thought it might be a good idea. And actually, she was going to have a roommate because there were 2 bedrooms. And when we got in the car, I could sense that she, was very quiet and she wasn't too sure about this. I thought she'd be kind of excited. And she said to me, well, I don't think it's time yet. I said, okay. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but she automatically knew that this was not what she was interested in. It was a few years later that we looked at several different opportunities, and she finally went with one of the providers. She stayed with them for a number of years. When things weren't working out as well for her or for us. And she now is with the Emmaus community. She lives with her 2 best friends. This could not have been a better place for Erin and her housemates. It's been a wonderful opportunity. I'm very, very pleased. Very good communication with the staff and myself. But it's the same thing. You might say, well, this is what we're going to do. Well, sometimes it doesn't work out as well. So just like for ourselves, we love the house we're in, but suddenly we've outgrown it. We don't want to be there anymore. So planning is pretty much the same for us as it is for her. This didn't work out as well, so we made a change.
And you can see this picture Mom's talking about. Erin will tell you, I live with my BFFs. She'll come to family dinners just like the rest of us, or she'll come for a weekend with Mom or a weekend with me or my sister, and then she'll say, okay, it's time to go home now. And she means her own home. It has been an incredible journey. And again, maybe not what Mom and Dad thought possible initially. She thrives in the environment she is in. So how do you plan for that? How do you plan the housing arrangements? Tapping in, again, to the community services that are available to you. Some careful planning to make sure waivers and things are in place, and you'll hear more about that today. For Erin, it was a sense of independence. It is a sense of involvement. It is an independent living situation, and she loves it. It may not be the same for everybody, so you have to kind of think about what fits best for our person. You heard Erin interviewing my parents. So she's had a little bit of a career path. She wanted to do office work. She started out in an office. Then she moved and she worked in the early intervention program at Achieva, where she was helping get the classrooms ready for young children. And we thought that would be a good thing. She'd like to teach the younger children coming in. And after a while, that wasn't really the best fit for Erin. And she wanted to do office work, some other things. She moved around. Currently, she works at Achieva, and I'll show you a picture of that, in the communications department because she loved it. She wanted to be a podcaster. She met someone who started something called All Abilities Media, who was promoting individuals with disability to get into media. And Erin did podcasting. You heard the audio interview she did with my parents. She did several of them, and she loves it. So much so that she has won some awards. This picture here is Erin standing beside her own cutout, which is much bigger than her because she's quite short. She called her own program, Look Who's Here, because every time she would introduce you, me, or anybody to someone else, she'd say, look who's here. So this is Erin doing her podcasting. Again, we needed some resources for some of these things she liked. That trust that she put some money into from working, she was able to use for some special things. It's pretty inspiring. I seem to be stuck on my slides. Thank you. So circling back just to a little bit of an overview of future planning. All of the things that go into future planning: healthcare, support services, starting with that early intervention. Maybe there's therapies involved. How do you drag those things along and ensure a continuity of care along the pathway of life? How do you think about education, employment, planning for those educational transitions, planning for vocational options and employment opportunities, planning for maybe some residential opportunities? Mom and I were asked by someone whether we thought the idea of the group living was a bad thing because she lived with two other individuals. Truthful, I think you've heard us say how good it has been. We never thought of that as a bad thing. So I guess it depends on what you think is a healthy environment for someone. It's been a fabulous thing for Erin. How do you do the financial planning?
Well, let me say, when Erin first moved out, she wasn't gone very long. And as Megan said, she would come and go. She'd come back and forth, but she would always look at one of her brothers and say, are you going to take me home? So we said to her, well, what is this? I mean, is that your home now? And she said, yes, this is yours and Daddy's home, Mom, but that's my house. That's where I live now. So, I mean, that as a parent, you go, ooh, I'm not sure I like that idea. But on the other hand, yes, she's taken ownership of what she's doing on her own, and it's made her very fulfilled and very happy. I mean, so the first time she said it, though, I went, but it's
Same as you did when the rest of us left.
yeah, well, same thing. I mean, I cried when each one went off to school and when they moved out. Yeah,
Right? So it is all about the basics, but you don't do it all at once. You come up with a roadmap. Today you'll hear folks talk about ABLE accounts, the trusts, some decision-making in terms of healthcare power of attorney and powers of attorney and guardianship. That was another thing that several years ago we did. Erin and my parents put together her healthcare power of attorney and power of attorney. Erin will pretty clearly tell you who she wants to help make decisions. And even though there's 5 of us as siblings, she also knows which one of us to go to for what.
for whatever she wants.
If you want something techie or someone to buy her that phone, she'll go to my sister, Mary Beth. If she is worried or anxious about something and just needs to talk to someone, I usually get those phone calls. But she knows, aside, from my parents, she'll very clearly, know some decisions she'll talk about. So those forms are all in place. The other piece of it, that circling back to the living environment, as I mentioned, my parents wanted her to have her sense of independence. It wasn't without some arguments at some point, because for years, I thought Erin was going to live with me. And let's be clear, I arm wrestled with mom and dad over that a little bit, right? We don't all always know what's best. Erin is right where she should be. But then when life circumstances and changes happened, my dad had had open heart surgery many, many years ago, at which point in time afterwards, my parents were very clear they wanted her to be safe and secure so that if something would happen to them, it wasn't a crisis where we were looking for housing. And so that was their decision point, along with Erin saying she might want to live outside the house.
And I think that was very clear. My husband and I felt very strongly about the fact that we did not want her to live with one of her siblings. For some people, for some families, this works very well. I figured by the time I was ready to go, my other children would be finished parenting. Their children would be gone. And then now they're going to bring Erin into the house and live with them. I didn't think it was fair to Erin, especially, and not to them. So I very much wanted a future plan of residential living where she was. And when my husband passed away 5 years ago, she was settled. Now, it's not that she wasn't upset just like everybody else, but she would go back and forth. And during those couple days when we were planning my husband's funeral, she would sit at the table, and then after a while she'd say, I have to go home now. Will somebody take me home? And then she'd call and she'd say, is everybody going to be there for dinner? And I'd say, yes. And she'd say, the staff said they'd bring me back. I want to come back home. So she went back and forth. And I think being in her own house was a comfort to her to a certain extent. And I was very, very relieved at the idea that this didn't throw her for a loop. I mean, she got through it just like the rest of us got through it. Yeah. So it was, we wanted her settled before something would happen to us. I didn't want that to come to the kids. And they all thought, Megan especially, but even my son said, well, I assumed she'd live with, Marion and I. No, that's not going to work. So I'm very pleased we did it when we did it.
And Erin's voice rang loud and clear through all of that. So you've heard a lot about the benefits of early planning. We certainly believed it led to a really good quality of life for Erin. This is a picture of her winning a Golden Quill Award for her media work. Not something we would have thought or planned for 52 years ago. Again, not without challenges and considerations. We've given you the highlights, the Instagram views of all the really easy, good, fun parts of her world. But a lot of what goes into future planning, you heard, are dealing with the emotional aspects of future planning. It's scary. It's scary for all of us. Address those fears. Address them with your loved one. Bring them right into the heart of that conversation. It will go a lot better. Think about your costs and resources and how do the trusts and able accounts help you with that. And you want to change that plan. That plan has been changed and adapted multiple times over the years based on her abilities and where she was in life, just like for the rest of us. And lastly, it is important to include more than one family member. And I was talking with a friend of mine who was the only sibling of someone, and she said it was really late in the game when my parents brought me in on the decision-making with my sibling. And I didn't really know the supports coordinator, and I didn't really know the residential staff because I was out of town, and I should have been involved in those ISPs. And I should know, because then when one parent got ill, she didn't know which person she was to go to for what. So that is something else we have done. The siblings and I, we don't all get involved in every part of it, but when mom has a meeting with someone that's important and Erin says, are we going to be at this? Well, who else will be there? Megan or Beth? Or if it's a medical decision, her brother. So bring different people in so that if something should happen, there is not a hiccup in everyone knowing what that plan is and who to coordinate with and what folks need. So assess your needs. Seek some professional advice. You have a lot of experts here today that you're going to hear from that will help you along the way. And if they don't know it, they know a resource that they can lead you to, because that is what happened for Mom all along our path.
I would have to say here, because I was very fortunate. There are 5 of siblings that she can count on. But we have taken, especially after my husband died, we had to redo my will. We had to redo Erin's. So there's different people on different things. I have Megan's on her bank account. Mary Beth's on something else. Mark is on her medical power of attorney, so that they will all be able to work together. I think all of them need to be involved, whether it's one sibling or whether it's 3 or 4. I think the siblings need to be there. And I like the idea that one of the kids is always with me when we have an ISP of Erin's now. So everybody knows what's going on. The staff knows if I'm not there, who to call. And that they're all involved in her house with her staff. So that makes it much, much easier. It makes it easier for the staff, and it makes it easier for the family.
So create the plan, but review and adjust. To be completely honest, 6 months ago, Erin was going to sit up here and do this talk with us too. But things are changing for her, and mornings are not so great right now. So we're reviewing and adjusting and planning for that next phase as Erin ages. And Erin is experiencing some cognitive decline. And it is not uncommon for folks with Down syndrome, more than twice as likely as the general public, to have symptoms of dementia. She's had some really great days, and she can fool you really well right now with some great conversation. And she's still doing very well and thriving in the community. But we are planning for what's next because we're seeing some changes. Having this plan in place, I'm not worried about what the next steps will be for her. Everyone's journey is unique. You will have your own. Make it as unique as the person you are working with and as unique as their needs may be. Think about those transitions and know you are not alone. My mom will be here at the family panel today for some questions at lunch, and we look forward to talking to anyone. We really appreciate you listening to our family's journey, and we wish you all the very best on your journey. Thank you.
Thanks.